Any comment? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Minutes are. Hand it over to you, James.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
The main topics of discussion tonight are 3 draft policies that have arisen from discussions either at recent meetings or long-running discussions, things that we think it might be helpful to formalize and standardize. And you'll have seen we've provided kind of rough drafts of policies that we think could be adopted. There's no obligation to adopt any policy, certainly no obligation to adopt the policy as it's presented. We can tonight either you can give feedback, we can have it up on the screen and kind of fine tune it if we feel like it's close to something after a bit of discussion. If it needs more discussion, then you're welcome to give us more feedback. We'll write it down and come back to you next time with a second draft. So the first one we have is a building envelopes policy. Now, this is something that has arisen recently because the IRS is now requiring that all conservation easement donations should include a building envelope if the landowner wants to use the donation to apply for tax credits. And it has never been the policy of this body to require building envelopes. As I understand it, we've taken the attitude that you'd rather see protection areas, avoidance areas, and anywhere else is fair game for structures. But now that every landowner that I've dealt with since I've been here has requested that they're going to put building envelopes in, we know that this body would prefer to see the building envelopes when they review the donation. And so it's a helpful thing for staff to have an official policy that we can present to landowners to say this has to be part of the package before it comes to the authority. We'll open it up to discussions.
So is the IRS policy applied to all buildings, including agricultural buildings, you know?
I don't know.
It's clear as mud.
That was the one thing that came that.
Okay.
I'm trying to find an answer and I couldn't find one.
I remember one of the few letters, I think, of disqualification that I read. It's one of the few Virginia projects. They spoke of dwellings or built, I forget what the order was, but they spoke of buildings in the first paragraph, and then they spoke of dwellings in the second paragraph, or vice versa. They used them interchangeably, which of course they are not.
Okay.
So they managed to muddy up the thing pretty significantly on that. But what they're trolling for, I believe, is dwellings. I think it's a good idea, perhaps, particularly with big ag buildings, chicken houses, indoor ride, etc. It doesn't hurt us to gather those up as well. I mean, I will say that building envelopes are a pain, but the conservation value of building envelopes can be quite clear. They actually put building in places that is least likely to say damage the ag value, the historic value, the scenic value, and that's a good thing. Yeah, but yeah, they are obnoxiously unclear.
Got it.
On this, you know, there's no policy particularly. They're just like when you go through their you know, the letters where they've objected to something, you can pick out this stuff as in the list.
And then in terms of building envelopes, how, I know we've dealt with them on most of the easements, but how big a building envelope is okay? Like if you had, just pretend that you had a 100-acre parcel, and it's 5 acres, okay, or is it?
Yeah, I don't think there's a formula.
I don't know that either.
Once again, there's zero guidance.
I
I've
found
seen
no
some
guide.
big ones.
The one element I saw was they didn't want, I know they didn't want the floating building envelopes because they didn't want them to be able to impair, those elements that have conservation value. So that goes to Sherry's point that if you identify an area that, so that it's not infringing upon protected elements.
If you have language in there where the building envelope can be modified or changed in any way, you're even more toast than as if you don't have it at all.
So you just said something that maybe you meant to say. So when we look at these parcels, we look at what we were trying to protect. And then we seem to gravitate towards finding this little, I don't know, 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre, something. It's nebulous spot. There it is. Declare, draw a circle around. But isn't it more an exclusionary sort of thing? I mean, you would mark all the area you don't dare build in, and you have freedom to build anywhere else. I mean, is it?
What do we double down and do?
Why don't we take an area, a big area? Let's say there's 30 acres of that 100 that you could build on without infringing on what we're trying to protect. But we seem to focus in on it right here.
I've seen some donations, some easements from other holders where the building envelope, it wasn't the whole non-excluded area, but it was a big area. Whatever we do with building envelopes, we'll still have the exclusion areas. Those certainly aren't going away.
Do we have?
I don't know that we can just say the inverse of the exclusion is the building envelope. I don't think that would fly.
I mean, if you have building envelope, if you have inclusion areas, I'm sort of thinking unless you have a special case where you're trying to eliminate something that's between 200 and 500 feet, let's say. If you have an inclusion area, you don't really need an exclusion area, perhaps?
You wait for non-building impacts,
Right.
driveways, clearing, stuff like that. But also, the question earlier was, what does IRS want the envelopes to apply to? And we don't know. But in the past, most of our deeds that have envelopes have only applied those to dwellings, not to farm buildings, run-in sheds, garages, and all of that. So if we want the envelopes to become the only thing, anything can be built, we need to approach the easements differently, and the envelopes are going to be bigger than they have been.
And that's sort of okay.
See, I mean, it seems to me again, I've been on this, it's been a while now, so you can see every easement pretty much every easement we've taken has a building envelope. And if the IRS is saying we need a building envelope, and you're not going to rely on people's good taste because failed exercise.
It's a weak thing to do.
I think we absolutely go with the building envelope, and then we can, on the specific instances, we can talk about the size of the building envelope, what it is we're trying to protect, and don't put it on top of the hill where there are no trees. But it would seem to me that that's sort of what we're doing already, and we've got the IRS breathing down our neck to some extent.
This is, as written, just formalizing the process that we're already doing.
Yeah.
And we've so far been relying on landowners' representatives to tell us where they want the building envelopes, and we trust them to know that it's not too big.
Okay, so let's take that process where the applicant comes in and says, this is where I'd like to build. Is that okay with you? That's nice. But what about the case where they aren't specific? We're saying we're gonna pick what, 1 acre, 2 acres? Are we gonna exercise judgment here? And then we set precedent?
My thought process was in terms of,
What's the guidelines on just, to me, there ought to be something there that says, like we do with house size, square footage. No,
It's kind of arbitrary.
So are you gonna do the same with the building? Or are you gonna say you can build anywhere here? Well, now you're getting to fairly floating. And what are how did we come up with that? Well, we're trying to protect the stream, we're trying to protect the view shed, we're trying to protect whatever. And then what's left over could be 30 acres out of 100 acres. You say anywhere in there, except the house has to be this size. I don't know. Or are we also playing the game of access, easement, roads, paving, that kind of thing? Are we playing all sort of a pre-construction impact to streams?
The only thing.
What are we doing with this?
The only thing this says is that if the landowner wants a building envelope, whether that's just for dwellings, whether that's for all structures, whether it's big or small, if they're going to have a building envelope, then the authority will review it as part of the donation proposal and has to review it.
Would the IRS frown on 30 out of 100 acres being a building?
It's not up to us.
I would like the donor to rely on the donor's attorney for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to see us identify the areas that are to be protected and to be excluded, and then direct them and say that
Tell us
it's
Out of the
advisable
30
to have.
acres, you
building-
identify,
Oh, you identify a building envelope, but before we bring it to this body, you'll have the building envelope.
Yeah.
presented to you.
I'm in favor of what's up there. I think trying to mirror what the IRS has put in place, you know, and we keep doing what we do with square footage and farm structures and buffers and setbacks.
Because our templates declare that we're not providing any tax advice. We're distancing ourselves from tax advice, and we don't want to be there. But we also know that the IRS requires building envelopes, so.
Well, they certainly have been unfavorable to those projects that don't.
Right.
Have a lot of people, you know, surely are strings attached to this, someone might say, but there's no one at the end of the string. Sometimes you get by. I mean, a landowner once said to me, I'm gonna do X, and all I can say to him is the chamber's not always loaded. You know, so sometimes you get away with something that if you got caught would not be what you got away with. But yeah, we don't want to give tax advice, but we also don't want to put in our template something that we think brings a landowner, you know, in peril.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
I like this, and I also think this conversation itself is a worthwhile one to have, because it's gonna be the donors' attorneys that are gonna come up or present us with something that now we've had a discussion. You know, I'm still uncomfortable about not knowing if farm structures are included in an easement or not. And I don't know if we should create our own clarity on that, or is that just,
Presumably that will just come as part of each donation. They'll say this building envelope is for everything, like the
Yep.
recent Carlson donation.
Yeah.
That is how that was structured. But some before were only dwellings.
Yeah.
All the previous ones were only landed dwellings.
yeah, I mean, that's one of the benefits of what we do, is that, you know, we're not lawyers creating law cases and precedent. We've got the flexibility to kind of tailor easements uniquely to themselves also.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, there's an art here, not a science. I don't think we're going to be able to create a template that's going to work in every single case.
Right.
And, you know, I live on a farm. I mean, the only thing I'll say about farm structures is things change, right? You know, you need a run-in shed because you got something going on in a pasture or whatever. And so I don't know that we're going to know the answer where the IRS comes down on this. And again, I think we just have to look at the individual easements. If it's an indoor riding ring, that's different than a 2-stall run-in shed. So
I think every property is different.
yes,
If you have a property that is deep in the woods somewhere, the requirements or what the property suggests to you that you might do in terms of terms is going to be quite different than as if you're at Castle Hill. So each property is going to suggest different parameters for building envelopes. I do think, looking at the memo, that at least in the way that we, building envelopes, develop them at VOF, we don't review and approve what a landowner brings to us. We develop in concert with the landowner the building envelope, because it's a continuum. I mean, you get somebody advised by, rest his soul, Steve McLean, and they will say, well, let's have that building envelope on the top of that hill overlooking the state scenic river. No.
Right.
You know,
Not on
where
top of
other
it.
landowners are like, oh, I get that. I'm a farmer. I don't want the house in the middle of my farm field. So it's a discussion, I think, and sometimes the discussion has to come more from our side to say, that's one of the important conservation values right there where you've identified. So let's keep talking.
Yeah, I feel like we've done that back and forth before that. Look at something. and
Yeah,
say,
but if we're gonna craft language for the memo, I would like to say something more like developed in concert with the landowner and the staff, rather than say, you bring us something, because they'll have no clue what to bring you.
Yeah.
So-
And then we'll bless it from their position of dead zero knowledge.
Yeah. don't
You know,
feel-
they're gonna ask Steve McLean or somebody if they think to proceed from zero. So I think you go, I don't know how you work when you do an easement, but I would think you go out, you talk to the landowner, you say, okay, what about building envelopes?
Mhm.
And then you have a
We're having that back and
back and
forth right
forth
now
discussion.
with the landowner. Yeah, that's exactly how
Yeah,
we.
so
how
if we
do
could
it.
just tweak the sort of the verbs that you're using there, I think it would feel more like what we're supposed to have, you know?
On the second line, do you, looking at it, say those envelopes reviewed and approved, would you like it to say those envelopes developed and reviewed in conjunction with the authority?
Yeah.
And ultimate, and then also,
Say developed by the authority, I mean, you are the authority when you go out.
You could just say staff if we mean staff.
Right.
Oh, stop. You just buck up and go.
She says that now.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then later, you're not the authority.
This play out this scenario. So we have the dark forest,
Mhm.
100 acres of just forest.
Yeah.
And someone wants to put one dwelling on. So what does a building site mean? Does it mean the yard? The volleyball court,
It means,
the tennis court?
Well,
So when I'm looking, so someone says, well, I want to cut down 5 acres of trees because I want a big yard.
Mhm.
Okay, so you say, all right, 5 acres. The next guy that comes in, you feel that, that's too much or something. We're gonna exercise that kind of judgment, right?
Yes, and that,
So the next one only gets 2 acres
and that is how
of the dark
the
forest.
proposals are created. Is we had an example just like that that was approved by this body last meeting or the meeting before, where the main conservation value was that it was all, the property was all forest and there were no structures on it, but the donor wanted to be able to build one dwelling and associated buildings, and we worked with him. He told us where he wanted the dwelling, and we worked with him to create language such that in this case, the building envelope, which was about 2.5, 3 acres, would cover all the places where he wanted to build and the driveway. And we said nothing outside of the building envelope. But if he had come in and said, I want the building envelope to be 10 acres of this parcel, we would have said, well, that's kind of cutting into the conservation values there, and we wouldn't be sure about that. And we'd have probably said, we don't recommend that, but we can take it to the authority and see what they say. So there is that back and forth, but we never say for sure they're not going to approve this or they will approve this. And we can, even in the most obvious cases, we would say, we don't recommend you do this, but we will do if you insist. We will bring it to the authority.
I think the language,
Tree cutting, the building envelope is usually buildings above a certain small size, because you've got run-in sheds and stuff like that that just have to be everywhere. So
think the
it's-
language that Richie introduced still gives you the flexibility about develop, because each and every one is, I mean, they come in different shapes and sizes. And we have to know that we've got flexibility to look at each one.
Well, exactly.
So do we need to do anything formal to?
It sounds like we're close to approving this, so I'd like to try to get the language
Yeah.
down in such a way. So we said developed.
And some
Mm.
envelopes, I think it's perfect because the IRS is not clear. I don't think we have to be draconian. So if somebody wants a building envelope that covers only houses. In a somewhat related issue, Richie, I think that we should require that people have legal counsel. Now,
We do, don't we?
No.
I don't think so.
I just trying to remember a deed that went through without legal counsel, and I don't
And I
think,
remember particularly the ACE program where people were short on money. They would be transferring hundreds of thousands of dollars with no advice at all. And it was iffy.
yeah, I don't recall closing one of the donations for this body without an attorney. I think we've approved some without an attorney, but
But not.
I'll say they died on the vine.
But I mean, what I'm saying is related to this.
Thinking
in the-
about
it. Who was it?
Look at what,
You
are a lawyer who advises client.
He had talked to
Yeah.
some.
So the owner's an attorney, but he didn't have outside counsel.
Fool for a client, they say. Do they not?
So anyway, it certainly, it's a fair issue.
I mean, some landowners are more tolerant. Some lawyers are going to present the situation to his client so that his client feels comfortable being this tolerant and having only dwellings or only farm buildings over 10,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet. And I think there needs to be room for us to move within that. But there also needs to be, I think, some legal advice administered. Even if only quasi voluntarily to the client, so that, you know.
I mean, even during the.
Well, I mean, what's in
even
terms
during
of,
the draft- Even during the drafting
Yeah, I
of the
don't think the
proposal.
draft should come to us unless the guy is represented personally.
So they shouldn't be, we're not talking about the deed, which obviously requires legal representation. You're saying anybody who even has a proposal summary put in front of you all for an approval should already have had legal consultation before doing
I think
it.
it's sort of a good basic idea. I mean.
Can we say we strongly should?
I think-
Draft sheet.
But we always
you're close to
encourage-
drafting a deed if something's
Yeah.
coming to us.
We always encourage people. I'm just wondering to what degree we can force it to happen.
Strongly encourage is good enough. And again, I mean, in the case of Common Park, the owner's a super sophisticated real estate attorney, so. You know, it's,
I mean, we have a form that says, among other things, who's your lawyer and what's his name and email address? And then there's a box that says, even though we have told you it's a good idea, I decline to have legal counsel. And I hereby declare myself a damn fool.
That might
You
be wrong.
put that EP down.
we could like get a list of attorneys and appoint them.
They'd love us, wouldn't they?
Ugh, ugh.
Well, even the legal system allows you to represent yourself. So
fair point.
I don't know why you would have to tell them to get an attorney.
Yeah, letting them know it's a good idea is a good thing.
But I think
And I would,
ready to go.
We're good on this one.
Yeah. So do you need a motion?
yes, we can.
I move that we approve the language
Second.
as revised.
All right, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on. So the second one on the agenda is something that has been discussed by this body a couple of times this year, and that is the question of whether to require easement donors to combine a multi-parcel property into one. um, At roughly at the same time as the easement is donated. We can get into discussions of whether it's before or after or simultaneously. But that as part of the donation process, those parcels should be legally combined, as in the landowner should submit an application for a boundary line adjustment to legally eradicate the internal boundary lines and to make it legally one parcel. And here is a draft policy that we think would do that if that is what this body wants to do.
What does that second paragraph mean? What times?
Yeah, so we often encounter donations, for example, if it were a donation of a property that's say 200 acres, then it would be fairly standard for the authority to accept it and to allow it to be split into two and sold separately. But that property may already be multiple parcels, say 5 or so. And in that case, it wouldn't necessarily make sense to require them to turn the 5 into 1, because within the easement, it's allowed to be split into 2.
Okay.
And so this says
You
the
can
landowner
adjust
would
it.
be allowed to combine it such that there are 2 parcels.
Okay, that's what I kind of thought it was, but I'm glad you explained.
So,
So share
so in this instance that you just said, if the easement says that there's one division, right? The owner or this language would have the ability to have 2 parcels with 2 different owners.
What's that last sentence mean?
That just doesn't preclude later boundary line adjustments. So it's not saying that if the owner is permitted to subdivide, that they have to figure out exactly how they want to subdivide.
Okay, so they could present it as 2 equal
Mhm.
and later move the separation line.
If the deed allows it, yeah.
One
They don't
third.
have to make the final
Yeah.
decision right at the beginning. They can change it later. As long
just
as
would
we
have-
approve
Would
it.
still say that boundary line adjustments, both sides have to be under easement.
That's for external boundary line adjustments, yeah. This is just for internal.
Gotcha.
So I just,
Clarify something that's really basic that I thought I understood a long time ago, but somebody told me maybe I don't understand it anymore. Is,
Gosh.
Whenever she says that, she's about to just hit you with something.
if you have one parcel and it has, let's say, 4 division rights assigned to it, you could build 4 houses on that one parcel without having to divide in this county. Is that right still?
Theoretically.
Yeah, you can for the small lot rights, although I believe if you do 3 or more, you have to do site plans to
right.
ensure that the division can still happen later if needed and still meet setbacks and all that.
Okay.
But and this is something I'm not totally sure about, but what I believe I heard is that it's no longer possible to build multiple houses on a single parcel based on 21-acre rates. So if you've got a parcel that say has no development rights, but is 105 acres, so it could be 521s, you can't build 5 houses on it without dividing. You actually have to do those 21-acre divisions, is what I most recently heard from my own department.
so you're saying you think that if there's one parcel, you can't build a separate house, even if it remains one parcel?
You can if the multiple houses are based on small lot, the 2-acre development right lots, but you can't if they're based on the potential for 21-acre lots. Is the way I understand
I'm
it.
not sure I understand that. So,
Yeah.
so in other words,
Draw on the board.
And what I'm thinking is this county at least used to be one of the most sensible counties in terms of, and I mean that to cover a broad brush of things. One of the most sensible counties in terms of the fact that if you've got a 300-acre single parcel of record, that you can build X, if you have 4 division rights or 4 development rights, whatever you call them, that you can have actually 4 houses. In something like Spotsylvania, you absolutely cannot do that. You have to divide it into 4 tracts. Because there's an absolute rule, 1 house per parcel. And so as you think about consolidation of parcels, the point of which is to make easements more durable. To absolutely forestall and ward off the concept that somebody might sue the authority and say, well, I've got 18 division rights, so I should be able to divide or 18 parcels of record. So I should be able to divide my farm into those 18 parcels.
But if the easement says otherwise, that's a contract in perpetuity, right? That they've voluntarily agreed to. I mean, isn't that a sort of a binding contract?
Well, I mean, I think you can find, if you go before a judge who has a property rights orientation, for example, you may find, you may not agree with it, but you may find an interpretation that the property shall not be divided means the property shall not be further divided. And that's when you're going to go to court. When we all think that we've brought belt and suspenders of the language to try to forestall, that's interpretation of the language. But the ultimate way that you can be sure is to consolidate parcels. And that's why VOF is now going to every county in the union, as it were, and talking to every planning department to figure out what their specs are and how we can organize so that we don't prevent what the deed allows, like 3 houses in Spotsylvania, you want to know division easement. But we don't, I mean, there is an easement in this county that is 18 acres total. And it has 18 subdivision parcels of record. It was done by someone who was very high up in the Internal Revenue Service many years ago. He gave the easement because he looked at it and said, self, why would I not? But, you know, that's an extreme example of if that interpretation were to hold with that particular tract, you would have no easement. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't. I'm not saying that it would be right for somebody to contest it. But as we think about making easements durable onto the 7th generation, this is one of the ways that has been recommended to us by our AG legal counsel, that we should think about making the easement more durable.
So,
So that's why I tend to, you know, make a problem of this, you know, over the last couple of years, because we've started thinking about it in the last couple of years.
so the real life situation, so the mountain land at Castle Hill, which was given to the Nature Conservancy. I think it was originally it was 340 acres, and I think there were 50 or 60 parcels, just crazy number. And so the easement said there are 50 or 60 parcels, but they shall be treated as one. And you know, my only reticence is if you talk to anybody who's tried to consolidate parcels in the county now, it's a long, expensive process, surveyors and so forth. And I think back Castle Hill situation, to basically take 60 parcels or whatever it was and make them one on mountain land would have been a really, really expensive task. And I'm not sure we want to get into that. And maybe there's some risk that some land rights judge makes a determination in the future. You know, there's always some risk in anything you do, but I'm a little hesitant to make a potential landowner reduce the parcel size with surveyors, county improvement and all that.
And this is pretty draconian, I will say, this version. I think it's important that we try to encourage it and do it when we can. I'm not sure that you want to require it, and we're trying to figure out in the next year or so, and it would be great to have, you know, Albemarle County's input in this. how we can probably go through VACO and maybe get a statewide change so that it's not so hard. Because we are running into this, that it's time and money. And that's a problem.
It seems like a simple approach would be, because it's not the internal lines, the perimeter is what's important. And that it seems like surveying the perimeter and everything there within. You know, that the internal,
You run into the vacation of parcels ordinances
right,
that tee it up as if it's for different circumstances, and then it ends up applying to something like this. So you end up having to, I mean, I think this county is one of the most difficult in terms of what they require. That they require not only 2 surveys of, say, 2 constituent parcels, but they also require a 3rd survey, which combines them with hooks.
Is that right?
That's not what the state law requires. That goes to the edge of what the state law says you can require. And yeah, we should try to figure out easier ways, but. And I also think in this county, you don't have to do everything that's here. Whereas if you have, you know, something that says maybe 1 division and 4 houses on 250 acres, you may have if it's just 1 parcel of record, you may be able to do everything that you want to do within that 1 parcel of record if you have 2+ division rights. So it may be here that we can figure out that you don't need it all the time.
I think I think it's a mistake to mandate that. Parcel size. That's it. That would be a deal killer for some people that aren't. And
financially onerous.
it's financially onerous. And again, Sherry, I really appreciate your point of view, but again, you know, walk across the street, there's some risk you get hit by a bus. Let's just accept that risk. And if counties change or there starts to be a precedent, legal precedent, then we can readdress. In one man's opinion.
Well, and I think as a policy, doing something that, I mean, when I started talking to planning directors about this, about the second guy said, don't ever use the word shall. If you're gonna do anything that would pertain to the various county, you must use the word may. So, I mean, I'm sort of thinking, if we have a policy that just says we would encourage this in cases where it seems that, I don't know how you exactly phrase that, but
If you
Yeah.
encourage, then you need to make a decision every time. On top of everything else, you're deciding about whether the terms are okay and if the building envelopes are in the right place. Then the authority has to decide, do we require this particular landowner to do this combination or not as well? And I don't know what the criteria for that decision are. If it's one you have to make every time and you want to try to be consistent, then how do you decide?
I just think easing us in the direction of thinking that it's a good idea to think about this.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
then
I think
each
that's fine.
time, like I have to fill out a form for every easement we do. And it says consolidation of parcels ? And there's a box that says basically not applicable. And that's when you've got, you know, 1 house, no division, 120 acres, which is, I have one of those in September. There's nothing to do. It's 1 parcel record, or, you know. So you just check that. Or if their division rights adequate to do everything that's in the easement on 1 parcel, then perhaps we're good. But, you know, sometimes that one that we saw, what, was it a month or 2 months ago, where
There's 3 that were together.
it really looked like we had 3 parcels. They didn't have much in the way of individual rights. They weren't very big. Maybe we should nudge those people. But I would,
Not willing to do it.
I mean, I would propose an encouraging and nudging resolution rather than a requirement one. But I think it's good for us to have it on our radar and realize that when we can do it, it's a good idea.
You're saying you
We
would
just, could we delete policy not to accept and say encourage?
Yeah.
the last clause sort of
Yeah, that-
backs out of the whole thing. Unless the authority specifically permits otherwise.
That's all right, but
I mean, it's,
In your opinion, would you like the authority to adopt something if the thing being adopted is just a statement that it's encouraged? Can we take that and just know that?
I mean, the discussion is good. Just the fact that we're
Right.
getting it on our radar as something to keep in mind. And when the situation warrants, you know,
Well, in a year, the IRS might start treating this topic like it is the building envelopes. And say the IRS requires that parcel lines be. But then it kind of takes me to a point that it seems like a mechanism of change could possibly come from the planning side of it, the county ordinance aspect of it. You know, that, like we talked about like we talked about potentially, it's an overlay that they're dotted lines, they're saying that this is where they were, but they don't exist anymore.
Just like the situation that Sherry just mentioned, that I think we've had two recently, and didn't both of them agree to combine them?
Just
Thinking of
one.
Just
One's in the
the one-
process of doing.
And the other ones,
That's
they
with,
didn't say no, but.
with Wayne, I don't remember the other one.
The other one
No,
we've
but-
asked and we haven't heard whether they were.
Okay,
Oh.
so it's still kind of
Oh.
out there.
No, the
But-
other one, sorry, the other one we haven't asked, that we were asking for building envelopes and setbacks, and I
Right,
warned them that this was of interest to the body, but
right. And I remember the one Sherry mentioned. And I don't think that one would relate to paragraph 2. With that one, because they were small parcels, 3 were kind of together, one was kind of in the front, or however it was laid out. We talked about somebody not reading the deed and how easy it might be for somebody to try to sell a parcel and then get caught later down the road, sort of thing.
one,
It wasn't permission.
one option here is, we could add it as a small section in the proposal summary template. So it's something that we,
yeah.
that we always say,
We have
either
this question.
yes,
to have
no,
in your
or
summary
not
sheet.
applicable.
Yeah.
So we just know what the deal is.
Yeah.
If we get another one like the one I was talking about,
Yeah,
where it's
yeah, no, I
18
remember.
parcels on 18 acres, we should know that, yeah.
And that will prompt us to always ask the question as well if it's.
The donor might see the logic in it and not, and be like, okay, it's part of the process.
Got a really conservation landowner and not somebody who's chasing the tax credits. Then they're gonna want to do something you suggest that might make the easement more permanent, more durable.
But actually, Sherry, so you just hit on an important point. So if an owner agrees that would reduce the diminution in value substantively on the property, right?
That's the point. You never combine, or whatever you call it.
Right.
Combine and do for now. Parcels before you record the easement. Frank Thomas came up with what I think is a beautifully elegant solution, which is that you do it by operation of the deed, you do it within the deed. Because in fact, the combination of the parcels is almost as strong a conservation action and is a supportive conservation action to the actual conservation easement.
So
So-
that doesn't
So by
reduce.
doing the one, you're actually strengthening and dovetailing
Got it.
with the other. I think it's a lovely solution because yes, you can do it afterwards. It gets away in a lot of cases.
So in the case, Sharon, we were talking about, Mr. Zobrist, he was gonna record it afterwards, but then he changed his mind and said the appraiser said it has no effect on the value, so he's gonna record it in advance. And I'm not suggesting that applies in every case, that's just in his case.
Yeah, we left
mean,
that.
That's fine.
We left this to him.
It's up to him, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is what you can really,
What that?
I said, in his case, it's often so that the chamber's not all.
So
I just said fine. I defer to him totally.
And that is the deal, is that
Little
if
less
legal
aggressive.
counsel advises that this is good advice, then they must think that recording immediately before is contemporaneous and therefore just as good.
Okay.
But if we're going to make a policy about how we would do this, I think we wouldn't, as an institution, want to favor doing it that way.
So what language do we need? Or are y'all
I
gonna
don't
work
think
on
we
it?
need Language, do we even need a motion? We know to add it to the proposals.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if we're not gonna do the formal policy and it's just a matter of informing landowners and having it covered in the proposals, then
Was there, did I hear an interest of putting it in the template also as a
Nudger?
medical?
It's a nudge,
Yeah.
not a policy.
And I'd like to have a resolution passed,
Yeah,
but one that it has the word encourage and nudge. if you want the word.
bring that back to you next
right,
month.
but.
Yeah, can we have something come back next month that is more encouraging of nature rather than.
And Sherry,
Well,
like,
the fact that Peter edit of taking instead of not to accept encourages.
Why don't we let them?
and like Richie just said, you want,
legal minds, universe sitting over here, so.
Sherry,
Like,
like,
this county is such that its situation is a little different than. say, Pennsylvania,
Oh, if
which
you
is
wanna do
going
it now.
on. Plenty of times when we don't.
I struck a lot of
need it,
stuff.
but Situation is adequate to the task. So something general, short, with the word encourage in it, I think would be great to have, but that's good enough.
Okay, we-
and just Richie reminding, you want to add the question to the template.
We have on the template, we have a lot of parentheticals that get deleted
Yeah.
and it'll just say, you know,
I think it's well worth it. to-
I do too.
Make a box in the temple, in the
A box, that's
the
it.
Easement summary sheet that we get.
All right, do we need to formally do anything on this?
We're
Let's have a resolution next time.
Clean it up.
we're close to getting it if you want to. Richie's been scribbling away.
Well, if Richie's been scribbling.
Striking,
Oh, see?
mostly striking.
James, I really appreciate this ability to live action edit. To instead of wondering what Richie's writing everything.
Chicken
Yeah,
fat.
I think I've accurately reflected Richie's scribbles.
That's
What word did you say?
persuade.
Persuade.
Strong on
And discussions to Sherry.
Persuade. It has a little more edge to it.
Plus, you know, this is a step in the, it does have a little more edge to it. I think we're. It's like one of those zero entry pools. This is the beginning of the conversation.
We can still come back to you with an improved version next month, or if anyone would like to make a motion. It's up to you.
Strong thoughts?
I'm
I'm all right with it.
all right with it.
I'm all right with it.
All right, well, we're-
You got it, right?
Well,
You good?
And need more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right,
Lovely.
thanks. Thank.
The last thing, this is another thing that has come up recently. It is common practice for land trust easement holders to authorize staff to make certain actions and decisions on their behalf. Specifically in the cases where approval request is required or needed in the deed, and the materials being approved, the proposed activity is quite straightforward and is quite obviously not impacting the conservation values on the property. Currently, the authority hasn't delegated any decision-making power to staff, and so we never do. But we've had a few instances come up, particularly last meeting and the meeting before, where we were bringing matters to this body that perhaps didn't need to come before you all. And so we've proposed certain specific types of approval that we think staff could act on the authority's behalf. Anything not mentioned, we would bring to the authority as normal. And there's also a clause in here that says if staff is unsure, even if it's within the category where staff has the authority to approve, we can still bring it to your if it's a
Even
weird
if you
one.
have an issue.
Right.
Especially
Right, and-
because
And we would,
we take the pressure off you.
yes, we would definitely err on the
It's any
side of-
discomfort.
So you've got in here, if it's a yes or no, does it impact protected areas? So those are protected areas that are mentioned in the easement, be it a buffer or wetlands or something like that.
Right.
But if a utility easement that comes, an infrastructure that comes through that property and serves other properties, but doesn't impact the protected areas, staff can handle it.
As this proposal would suggest that, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So let me chime in here. This is something near and dear to my heart. So my personal view is that utility easements are one of the greatest threats to conservation that we've seen in our generation. And so what's happened with utility easements is in many cases, they start out as something really simple. We're going to allow electricity to cross this property and hang poles, hang wires on poles and so forth and so on without any specified right of way. And what happens is the courts increasingly will allow other things to occur on those utility easements. So for example, the electric in Albemarle County electric transmission lines were only allowed to carry electricity. And then they strung up communication cable. It was a class action lawsuit and the plaintiffs won. And subsequently, a judge said, well, actually, that was wrong. You should be allowed to have communication cables on an electric power line. So in the most recent case, a judge ruled that Firefly or any broadband carrier could access the utility right of way for their services, any. So what's happened is these interpretations have expanded. And in my particular case, there is a 1929 easement that allowed for electric lines across the property. And PJM issued a possible 765 kilovolt power line with Keswick 3 days ago. So these are real and significant issues. And I'd like to just cite the Firefly right-of-way requests that they currently have, which essentially gives them access to the entire property for anything they deem necessary and fit, as well as controlling all vegetation and so forth. So in my particular case, the easement they wanted was along the driveway. So that would give them the right to cut down all the trees on the driveway. And I pushed back on the Firefly guy. He said, we're not going to change it. We've signed 2,900 of these in the area. So people are signing these easements. And he said, we would never cut a tree down. But the easement gives them the right to cut a tree down. So he might not.
And 10 feet wide.
I'm sorry,
You said anywhere, but it's 10 feet wide.
read the last sentence of. You have a
First
copy?
one, it says 10 feet wide.
So,
I have other copies of it, like to.
Why not?
so it's both overhead and underground, right? Even though in cases, I have no open it. The right of ingress and egress over the said premises and any adjoining lands of the grantors at any and all times for the purpose of exercising and enjoying the rights herein granted and for doing anything necessary or useful or convenient in connection therewith. That strikes me as foreign language.
Can that be legally interpreted as anything within the 10 feet in width?
I don't,
Why would, I
I-
mean, I can't imagine that with all of the property, they can go anywhere they want to with an easement that says 10-foot width.
And to see where they define premises.
right.
And then that convenient existing property.
That premises would be the whole parcel. Cause they gotta get on the property in order to access the 10-foot easement.
So
If their car is wider than 10 feet.
So the other problem is you don't know how the technology is going to change, and so you're signing up for something in perpetuity that you don't know the outcome of. And again, going back to the 1929 easements, Southwest Mountains, they were basically they were signed over the hood of a pickup truck to get electricity to the farms. And now there's the possibility of the largest transmission line in Central Virginia. And, certainly with data centers, there's not going to be less of this, there's going to be more of this. And so I think personally, from a conservation perspective, easement utilities are one of the most important aspects of conservation values going forward. We talk a lot about preserving scenic resources, preserving the character of the land, that sort of thing. And so these things can fly in the face of that. So the preamble here, I should have started with is, it's not as though we don't trust staff, because you guys are very talented and you've been through a lot. Unfortunately, some of us have scars on our back from having done this for a long time. And so, I personally think that the utility easements ought to come before this body before they're approved.
But Peter, your example makes me wonder. I mean, we really have people between a rock and a hard place. Because you may have had an option to have something other than Firefly. But like in our house, there's nothing else.
Let's start with.
Well, it's a lot more expensive,
But you know what I'm saying is that sometimes that's the option that everybody's been waiting for and that they feel is their main and only option. And so we may end up, if we can't get them to adjust their contract, then we are in the position of telling people they can't use one or more of the providers. I mean, it is interesting. They can take down buildings in order to, they take down your house, man.
So
So
you're dislike of Elon Musk on the one hand and protecting the conservation values in the other. And I think this is the first time we've seen Sherry in this situation. But
Musk aside, I'm not sure it's always an option for people to use something different. I'm not sure that we could use Starlink if we wanted to. I mean, that
Why?
never sort of presented itself as an option for us. Everybody in our part of.
You have to have an
was
approved
waiting on
pocket.
Firefly was the anticipated thing.
well, I think in that case, Sherry, I think that you make a very fair point. But I think in that case,
Attractive land.
if we were reviewing your east property that we
See what
have
I'm
an
saying?
easement on it, and those were the facts, then the body would likely say,
They're
well,
not clear about what it is.
okay, we get it. And, but I think, letting these utilities write easements willy-nilly, particularly with landowners that don't really understand what they're getting into, which I think is most of them, is a mistake, which it just boils down to an oversight issue.
I'm just worried about what you're saying that they won't change. Because a lot of times with those things, you say, well, cross out this bit, and they'll say, yeah, okay, lady.
I can only speak from my experience, but
Yeah.
the feedback I got was no chance.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I actually ran this through the planning commission and they said, well, this is standard language, you should never be.
So the.
Yeah, that's just a discomforting
Hmm.
fact, never mind the easement,
Right.
just looking at making the utilities, more. conservation.
The last few that we looked at last time, all of those were underground. They were only for, well, one crossed over, but it was, just one thing.
Parcels, they said.
So, you take the example, utility easements and infrastructure that serve other properties. If it's a major power line, it's 150 feet wide. So it may not affect a protected area, but that's a big kahuna.
But the easements, the early easements didn't specify width.
The new ones are coming in at 150 feet.
Right. But so the point is
Because they need the high power to run it. That's what a lot of those Dominion old ones are.
but yeah, what you agree to now may not be the eventuality. That's the whole point, is these things evolve, and that's why I think it needs increased oversight.
Well, I know you did. I'm working with an energy company that's trying to get in, but anyway, they, and you heard some of this, 40% of the energy in Virginia is from out of state.
Yep.
So, the governor and everybody's looking at how do we do that? A lot of it's in Northern Virginia. And what's the grid operator, TJP or PJ? JM. They fast tracked 50 projects that got the leapfrog over a lot of these others, whether they're data center driven or whatever, but it's gonna come. I mean, as far as what's the future is, I think the next 3 to 5 years, we're gonna see a lot of new power lines and feeding around the state and going over rural properties. So my thought was, if it gets to be one of those big kahunas, I think it needs to come back,
Yeah.
If it's a major power line that's coming in and it's obviously above ground and.
So we could either change this to the ACEA, or we could distinguish here between the local network
Distribution.
underground distribution lines from the major transmission lines.
So again, if you look at what's going on, and I just in my particular area, so this is partly due to Firefly, but they're upgrading the distribution power lines. So if you look at the Sysmon store, they just put in a fiberglass pole right next to another pole that's much taller. They've installed probably 4 or 5 new poles there. And it is in a rural historic district on a scenic byway. These are very significant intrusions on the conservation value of the surrounding land. So again, what you agree to today isn't necessarily what you're going to get. So you just say the distribution line is the distribution line. They can do whatever they want. The reality is you may not like the outcome. And I think part of our job is protecting the viewshed and protecting the conservation value. So
Yeah, it doesn't seem like because they have an easement that they're exempt from our standards of the conservation easement itself.
So I drove out Garth Road last night. Garth Road is, the power lines are just horrific. And so I don't think landowners appreciate how these things can change and evolve. And I think it requires more oversight if we're indeed trying to protect conservation values. And Sherry makes a fair point. There may be instances where there are no alternatives. And but anyway, this is one man's opinion. You all may disagree.
I think it's valid. This has nothing to do with us trusting you guys or your expertise. The landscape's changing right now. Is what it is. I think it's made us more wary. And this goes back to, I feel like even one of the very first ones, one of the easements that they wanted to put in, and we were worried they're going to put structures within those easements too. But I remember Dr. Moses he's like, no, wait, what does this easement really mean?
Structures other than poles.
Yeah, structures other than poles.
So let me get this straight. I mean, there's power lines and then there's communication lines, fiber optics. So is this all bundled together? Does this have to be?
Can
Well,
be, I think.
So that, again, what's happened is there was a ruling that said that any broadband carrier has access to the power line.
Yeah, but what if there's no power line?
If there's no power line, then if they have to use it, they will go to the right of way, the highway right of way. And they'll bury it or run poles. So again, really, I just know my neighborhood. So one of our neighbors buried the distribution line some years ago for an incredible amount of money
At their
And-
expense.
at their expense, their own personal expense, and they just put a large firefly pole in its driveway on the VDOT right of way, right in the end of the driveway for its country. And so what's allowed has changed.
Because Elon Musk aside, I mean, he's got competition. They're about to launch.
Amazon.
So there's going to be a choice. But I often think he gets rid of all these cell phone towers for in certain areas, particularly rural areas. I mean, I'm up in the Canadian border for 2 weeks ago. And I thought I was getting off the grid, but my Airbnb host thought that I should have Starlink. So I drive up the driveway to this little cabin with deer in the yard. And there is this white plate sitting in the front. Now, what is that? Well, Starlink. But it works. In fact, we use it in our business now. We're Verizon and AT&T are better. But we have competition coming. So there is a choice. And the prices aren't that bad, really aren't. So if you're trying to allow access for communications, there are choices. But if you're being squeezed to provide a corridor for power, and then the communications can use it, that's a different scenario, isn't it? I mean, there is an alternative to an applicant to get communications.
So what I've heard,
Am I wrong?
I think, just to bring us back to the policy discussion, I've heard a desire from a few to change these 2 boxes to ACEA. Do you want to discuss the other 2 areas where approval authority would be delegated to staff?
And Peter, is it okay to leave that third one, do you think, and just deal with the sort of transmission?
Yeah, just the utility.
Which is the fourth?
Uh,
The one that he's highlighted in blue right now. Lines that
Yeah,
go
I
only
think
to
that's fine.
somebody's property don't seem like such a big deal, you know?
so you're saying,
The second one is that it's just serving that property that we hold the easement on. I don't think we're concerned about that.
Increasingly, we're finding that where people used to just run a wire to the house or to the barn or whatever it was, the utilities actually want an easement, even for that.
that is
Right, but the native pond easement, and they were extending an existing distribution line down the driveway to the farm office.
Well, in the underground easements, I'm learning, aren't strictly underground. I get frustrated because when we ask for diagrams, the utilities or the internet service providers are kind of vague about what they're putting in, but it may be case by case, but if there's a long enough run, then it's gonna require some type of square utility box that is
Yeah.
above ground. And it might be more attractive than a telephone pole. But at sometime it might be important for this body to be aware of that, consider it. And I think last month was that the case? What came up where this body wanted to know what kind of facilities are gonna
Yeah,
be part of that run.
again, I think it's not as though we necessarily say yes or no. I just think it's a question of oversight. And so I think, we meet monthly by and large. And so it seems to me it's fair just to give the body a heads up of what's being proposed.
Yeah, so.
And,
I agree.
I think it gives, in terms of the deed and this body's position in terms of enforcing it. If it says that those are to be reviewed and they're not reviewed, you're in a better position. If they're to say they maybe could be reviewed, then the landowner is kind of in a different, more ambiguity in that sense. So from a legal point of view, clarity in the deed is always better in my view.
So James, back to the chart, I do think where we're headed is that points 2 and 3 should go to ACEA. EA. The right ones, yeah.
Yeah.
And then are we comfortable with the others?
Yes.
Do we need to do anything formal with this or just,
It'd be good to have a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt the policy.
right? Do we have a motion?
So move.
Mr. Taylor, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Here we go.
Our template currently says that for the utility easements that serve only the property under easement, that they don't have to be reviewed by this body. Are you all suggesting that template be changed?
See easements, or to just say that the improvements are okay? The difference is they've started asking for easements, rather than before they would just run a wire.
It's interesting because Brightspeed, which I have, has underground wire, no easement, no right of way.
But everybody's asking for easements now. I mean, Scott's right.
Right.
It's all right.
Which is why they need to come to the authority, as we understand it. Even though the deed says that utilities themselves are permitted.
So I mean, I think the template needs to be changed to clarify, and so I'll work on that.
Okay.
That if there's gonna be an easement, that it needs to come before. Okay. So I'll clarify that in the template.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm surprised that everyone's coming, they want an easement to run it to wherever, and I'm like,
Is it for access purposes that they want an easement? I mean,
I don't know why, because if you cancel the service, the easement's useless.
It's not necessarily useless. You just don't know what's going to evolve. And again, this gives them the right to go overhead or underground. And again, in my case, everything's underground. So they would theoretically have the right to go over.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll work on the template.
Great.
You have to be careful not to overload our own system with reviews. I mean,
We can revisit if we find out that you all have had to review a dozen minor distribution line easements and none of them raised any issues, then we tweak later.
yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
we can Go to some kind of consent agenda.
I was gonna say consent agenda, we're gonna be on there and
Still, even with that, you
We
still
don't
have to
have
schedule and wait for
I
that.
mean, it is bad from your standpoint, because you still have to deal with.
Yeah.
Well, and it's bad for the landowner because they have to wait for a scheduled meeting. to
Well,
happen.
exactly. If you get a line and it's gonna affect 50 people along Route 231, and that's 50 separate reviews.
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
So since, again, if anyone drives out to Keswick, just look at the Easement store, what's going on with the utility lines there. And these are all distribution and communication lines as an example of what can go wrong.
We have new business, James?
Not new business, we do have a couple of items of old business. Sorry, I'll try to make it quick.
she's got one.
The dog in the car, so. Well, I'm parked in the shade and the windows are down, so make me feel worse. I knew I had to be here for a quorum. His grooming appointment was late. Here I am.
You should be able to be let go.
Do you need it for a quorum?
Do we have to vote on anything? If we
No.
have to vote, yes, we need it for a quorum. If not, we
No,
just
these-
continue
these
for
items-
information
we don't need
purposes.
that. These items are
Put
for
the dog in.
Okay, if they're, we can lose a
I'll
quorum.
read the
Be free.
minutes. I'll read the minutes. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Percy, thanks you.
Thanks, Sharon.
So, this first item of old business is something that, I believe has been discussed before,
It's before you started here.
before I started. You know, PEC and VOF have signs that they give to landowners to put up on their property to mark it as protected. And certain members have expressed interest in having signs for ACEA easements. And I've been working on a draft design. I've got a quote from the sign printer. We figured out that we can accept donations to pay for these signs, whether they're from authority members or from landowners themselves. We're looking at, we could either do thick plastic, which the VOF signs that I've seen are thick plastic, maybe
Yeah.
PEC. We can also do thin metal.
The old ones were metal, a lot of them faded. And so they went to something else.
So we have those two options. The minimum order size is batch of 25 or 50 or 100, and the rough costs for those runs from $15 per sign if we're only getting a few, down to $5 a sign if it's 100 plastic. So that's just for your information. That's something that we're capable of doing if we get funds for it.
We have the fund has been established in the county accounting system, empty right now, but it is there so that we can direct them into that.
Don't we have that stewardship money from the Department of Tax?
I don't think they want us to use it.
It's for monitoring and legal purposes.
For monitoring legal defense. I'm not sure we can count it.
Well, that's a subset of the money that we actually get from tax. We vote every year, hopefully, to put some of that money into legal defense. But the actual money that comes to us is for stewardship in broadest sense, which this is.
Or have you just been moving all that tax money into?
I'd like to
Legal
review
defense fund.
and see our letters and see what they actually say. You start using that money for anything. Right now, we're using it for paying Montana for doing the monitoring and setting the amounts that you all determine aside for future legal defense. Those are the only uses for that money right now.
I cannot imagine it would not be okay.
It's not, we're talking about.
$500. Well, we can handle it.
I just like.
You shouldn't run into.
I like the.
I was gonna say.
The type A got
Just the A.
triggered a-
No.
This was a rough mock-up.
So the only question I have is whether we should say Albemarle County Easement Authority, because if someone sees it and they think, I'd like to know about easements in Albemarle County, this is more specific. And I don't feel strongly about it, but I just throw it out for discussion.
Yeah, I feel real strongly about it,
You just said we were sensible.
In which direction?
but I don't want to rely on it.
In which direction do you
I mean,
feel?
Rich may remember an unpleasant encounter where.
I think putting the whole thing,
Had divergent opinion from the easement authority
Yes.
on whether or not the house was a house.
Well, I mean, we're a separate legal entity, and so
Well,
I
that's what I mean. Is
mean,
we
to some
are
extent,
separate
but my
legal
thought
authority.
was there's a certain efficiency by using Albemarle County and their logo. I didn't want to put you all in a position to say, now you got to come up with a logo.
Right.
Right.
This
That would
is
take
an
forever.
official adopted
I'd
logo
rather
of the county.
the kudos accrue to this body.
This is the official word mark,
Word.
which is used in certain places instead of the seal. So the seal still exists. And so that's why I use the word mark, because this body doesn't have official branding.
The real tension is it readable? So if you start trying to cram something else in there about this authority, you're gonna have to trade somewhere.
You're saying you want the conservation easement words bigger and
Well, I think
the name of the
I
authority.
think that's the whole thing now. Where it comes from is maybe misleading. It's not the county. So,
They're gonna go to ourmole.org regardless.
yeah.
Which is the place for them to go.
Need to put any more information.
Could we just say ACEA?
So you run it along one of the edges.
I think we have to say something, because otherwise, if people have questions, they don't know who to call, but we could probably put
Well,
Albemarle Conservation Easement Authority at the bottom in smaller.
okay,
print.
so you're not gonna put the telephone number up there, but you could run it on the edges. You got enough and it could be small enough that somebody who cares would walk up to the sign and say, oh,
That's who I.
that's the body, and this is the contact.
Yeah, smaller print might draw them in a little bit.
Don't take anything there and shrink.
As long as we don't represent that these easements are held by the county of Albemarle,
That's right. Well,
that's all I ask.
So then I
that
did
looks
it.
awful
Except in the
close.
cases where.
And you know, real close.
The more I think about it, Sherry, I mean, it's possible that there are people in Albemarle County and perhaps elected officials that don't agree entirely to the easement activity. And so,
You think?
to your point, and so I think we have to identify this body as,
I mean, the supervisors may think that they're in control of the thing. And somebody complains about something that might be happening on Woodlands Road, for example, supervisor gets involved. Yeah.
I agree, totally agree.
yeah, so if you wanted to take the real estate that the Albemarle County logo is as useful as it might be somewhere, and use that to somehow distribute the real proper attribution, that'd be all right. But I wouldn't make it any smaller. It always irritates me when I see a blurry sign. I can't read it. I mean, are they selling something?
Any better.
That was low hanging fruit right there.
Okay, but no, I mean, really,
Say eat Albemarle
but it doesn't,
easement.
we're not,
Even without it really rocking the boat here.
Yeah.
you can get it in.
I mean, is there any, I don't know of anything that prevents us from using the mountain logo over Albemarle. It's not trademarked, we could, by our staff,
Old
Yes.
people are very.
they're
touchy
sensitive.
And possessive about that.
There are style
Apparently,
guidelines
if the
that we
design-
can't.
And you can't, okay.
I think
I wouldn't be,
So administratively, you can't do it. Legally, you could, but administratively, it's bad form.
we can just
It's a culture issue.
lay out the
That's fine.
title of the authority,
That's fine.
place font.
Okay.
It's fine.
I just like the mountains. I thought.
Just keep the conservation easement big, so that's the first.
Yeah.
Sure,
Oh.
that's great.
I just like the physical notice that if you come to the property, if you're looking to buy it, or even if you're the landowner, you see the reminder, this is.
Yeah, I think it's great, absolutely.
I suggest tacking a copy of the deed up right underneath it. Like that might be a bit extreme.
in font big enough for Dave to read it, that's fine.
Can you imagine the confusion it would cause if it actually said public rec on facilities too?
Yeah, right.
People would be.
People come with their four wheelers.
So again, I think we have direction, right?
Yes.
All right, anything else?
Is there any other old business?
There is one other item of old business. Last month, we informed you about a homestay application that had come in for the dwelling on Taylor's Gap Road, which is one of the Ragged Mountain preservation tracks, which this body has an easement on. This is the same parcel as the Ragged Branch Distillery. And Jay is not participating in this. He recused himself last month. His employer is involved in the enterprise. And we were directed to tell the applicants that what they had proposed, which you can see here and the short description they gave, what they had proposed was an inn and would turn the single family dwelling into an inn. And because the deed only permitted a single family dwelling as a structure and it did not permit an inn, then turning it into that use would mean the structure is no longer permitted under the easement. And so we communicated that to the applicants, and they have since come back to say that it is still a single family dwelling, and one of the owners lives there full time. And so we're going to seek more information from them about who that owner is, and the owner is an LLC, which complicates matters.
They also
How
say
they're
they-
connected to the LLC.
Did they also say they were giving up on the 5-room plan and only sticking with 2 rooms with a,
They said they would stick to 2 rooms instead of 5 rooms.
I can offer context if you guys want.
I don't think you should. I'm just sorry, I just don't.
Yeah, I don't. I think we
appreciate
just need more information.
And this is just for your information that we're seeking more information. Hear about it more next month, hopefully. That is all of our old business. Does anyone else have any thoughts?
All right, back at the table.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, that.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Well done, folks. I'm glad that these were worthwhile conversations to kind of iron some stuff out. Appreciate all of y'all's time. Yeah, pleasure to meet you all.
Service in your own property. Are they asking for an easement to go along?